Hello everyone, welcome to this new video. So today we are going to start towards core skills on Python. So in the past set of videos, we have been talking about many different things. So we talked about how you can frame up your journey in data science. We talked about different skills there. We started with SQL, the technical skill, the first technical skills in our last video. And now today I'm gonna give an introduction towards Python, right? So we know that there are many skills which is pretty much needed in a data science for your journey. So definitely that's where Python comes into picture, and definitely Python is also one of those skills which becomes your mandatory requirement for your journey in data science. So that's pretty much what we will be. So having been said that, that's pretty much what the agenda for today is. Let's wait for a few more people to join in. Meanwhile, if people are there with me already, you can just give me a heads up, like yes or no in the chat, or hello, probably if you are pretty much with me. So that should be fine. And then we can be good to start. But as I said, the agenda for today prominently would be, understanding how data science will be using Python as a mandatory skill. So, and again, I will be pretty much talking about why Python and what exactly in Python which makes it more, usable in terms of its perspective. What are the applications of Python? And in fact, in data science, what are we going to do with Python here? So I'm going to give you a fair introduction towards that as well. So that should be the tone for today. But again, as any time, it's pretty much a live session. So anything which you want to talk about, guys, we are pretty much live here. So you can let me know, and I'll be happily taking up your questions. So anything which you have, like any point of time you got stuck or anything which you want me to share, so please let me know. So we can definitely talk about that as well. Okay, so with this, I think we're good to start. Let's start, guys. We'll talk about Python here. So on your screen right now, as you could see, we are going to prominently talk about Python, right? So the question arises here, why specifically Python? What will happen if I learn something else? Suppose, say, R. There's other platform also on which we can do the data science job, such as R. I can also do things on SAS. So why specifically we are talking about Python here? Why not anything else? Is there anything which is very specific about Python which we supposed to know as a data science professional? So yes, we will be discussing about that as well, and we will try to find out how and why Python shares the most advantageous part here and why Python is important here. So we'll be discussing about all of them. So, but again, before moving further, just a quick introduction about myself. As always, my name is Arpit Jain. And the reason why I am here, guys, because data science is truly what my passion is, and I really like sharing my expertise with people. So anything in general also, please feel free to reach out. Towards the technical side, I have around 10 plus years of industrial experience in analytics into multiple different fields. And along with that, I'm also a motivational speaker. I do talk to students regarding their career, job placement. So anything in general which you feel you want to discuss, you want to talk about, I'm more than happy to take up. Okay. So please feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to discuss. So now we'll move towards our agenda for the day, Python, right? So inside Python, I will first try to give you a basic introduction saying what is Python. So we'll first talk about what exactly Python is, and when we say Python, so what prominently it involves, right? So what do we have in Python that makes it more suitable for us to do our job? So we'll talk about the prominent thing, what is Python. So we'll cover some basic properties here. So basically, we will be covering some few characteristics, or we can also say this as properties of Python, such as certain features what are the certain features, and on top of that features we will also be discussing about its applications. So in data science, the moment we have it, so how exactly we are going to use this for our purpose here? So what are the different applications of Python? So we will also be discussing around that part. So how Python is getting helpful for us, we will try to find out that as well. And along with that, then we'll move towards the core technical sides of Python. So we'll talk about something called as variables. So how are we initializing the variables in Python, certain data types, right? So in data types, we have certain basic ones, and then we have certain advanced ones. So we'll talk about them. Few basic examples, I'm going to give you that. And then on top of this basic advanced, prominently, we're going to be talking about strings, some strings function. So, and then at the last, we will talk about functions. So what are functions? So all of this prominently what the agenda for today comprises of, guys. So we are going to prominently cover the introduction towards Python and give you a fair idea about what all different things are comprising. Again, so let's be very honest with the expectation. I'm not going to give you in detail of every single thing, which is obviously impossible in 1 hour of time. But definitely, I'm going to give you a layout of all of these things from where you can build up the things there, right? So let's be very honest here, and then let's start learning. In terms of application, I'm going to give you all those different rules which are applied, and then in fact, on all the small topics, we are going to get a bit detailed here. So moving ahead, let's first talk about introduction to Python. So first thing first, as you can see here, it's pretty much a programming language, guys. When I say programming language, what do you mean by that? So we have studied or we have heard about different programming languages like say Java, C, C++, C Sharp, then we have .NET. So many different languages are there. So now why another language? Why Python? What is there in Python which is not there in anything else, right? So that is where we have to understand it from that perspective, where we know that now this is the place where things are going to work out. So from this perspective, we have to find out how other languages are equally important and how Python is different from this other programming languages. So like any other programming languages, like say Java, C, C++, we have so many syntaxes. And every language has its own pros and cons, and every language has its own respective usages, right? When I say Java, so I know that Java is prominently used towards the backend development of my software. C, C++, similar usage, .NET. So I have many programming languages where it finds its own respective usages and applications. And Python also becomes one of those programming languages which has its own applications, which has its own usages, pros and cons, and likewise. But consider Python as any other programming language. So yes, when I say programming language, it definitely is going to have certain syntaxes. The syntaxes means certain rules or methods in which I'm going to write the code. So whatever coding I'll be doing, there's certain rule for that, right? So how exactly am I supposed to write those rules or methods? That's pretty much what we are going to talk about. So that is what this intro to Python will be comprising of. Okay. And it is built by Mr. Guido van Rossum. So he was the person who was the key developer of Python language. So Guido van Rossum was the person who actually built up Python and who actually set up the tone for Python. And it is pretty much simple and readable. So when I say simple and readable, I mean, you can imagine, like, even if you do not know anything in Python, trust me, if you start reading the codes, right? Just be a layman, you don't know anything about Python. Trust me, just by reading the lines of code, not 80 or 90%, you shall be able to get at least 70% of the code, at least the crux of the code, you should be able to understand. That's how readable the codes are. You can pretty much think it as plain English sentence, right? So it is so simple and it is so readable that it becomes very intuitive for the developers to write the codes, to develop, to write, to read. In fact, for any person who is actually reading it, it becomes again similarly more readable as well. So the Python syntaxes are so simple and so readable that any layman can actually easily understand it, read it, work on it, right? So one of the very crucial, one of the very key characteristics or properties of Python, I would say, is very simple and very readable codes. And I'm going to give you some examples also. You'll actually see it to your own eyes and understand how exactly, how simple it is to actually read as well. And then I would say it has library support. What do we mean by library support? So Python, it by default comes with certain packages or certain libraries. These are nothing but some helper functions which are actually getting your job done in a simpler fashion. So suppose you have to print something. So you have to print, say, hello world. So you have already certain mechanisms, certain things which are coming inbuilt for you. So there are so many libraries which are there with certain functionalities which helps you to get your job done. That is for the inbuilt packages. But again, even on top of that, it has so much of third-party software support, third-party libraries. For example, you might have heard of data analysis packages such as Pandas, NumPy, right? Those are what? Libraries, high-end APIs. So Python does provide tremendous library support in which whatever you can think of can actually be built up on packages where we have some sort of functions wrapped together in a class. So it provides so many functionalities, it provides so much of advanced libraries where you can just simply install it like any third-party application, and then you can start using it and your codes will be again very simple. So you might not need to write your work from scratch. You can simply import the libraries and then get this all done. And the very good thing is, since Python is pretty much an open source platform, when I say open source, I mean it is pretty much free of cost. I am not going to pay any money to use Python. It's pretty much free of cost, open source. So when it is open source, anyone, practically anyone, can develop a library and help the entire community. That's where I say the community support also is very, very, very strong in Python. So when you are stuck in any problem, when you are stuck in your coding issues in Python, you can probably post your queries and issues and get the support from the community who is actually working on Python. So the moment you post your question, for example, on say Stack Overflow, people are tracking Python like anything. So your 95% of the time, your issue might already be solved. You could just set up your question. You will be seeing your question already there on Stack Overflow, and you will be able to get the responses from the community there. And again, if it is not there, you can pretty much post your own question and you can expect the answers very quickly. And that's how the strong community of Python is. People are actively working towards it and they're trying to help each other because Python is definitely an open source language and it does provide support both from community as well as the library support. And on top of that, it is also a multi-purpose language. Again, when I say multi-purpose language, it is pretty much where I say it has its application in multiple places. So I can talk about probably a software development. I can talk about AI or ML applications. I can talk about even game development. I can talk about web development. There's so many places where Python finds its application. So there's a myth because Python has, I mean, in the recent past 3-4 years, Python demand has increased tremendously. And the reason to that is machine learning, because artificial intelligence, machine learning space has evolved very drastically in the past 3-4-5 years, I would say. And that is where the introduction of Python, that is where Python has also started increasing, getting the importances as, comparatively very high than past. So that is the reason why there's a myth that Python is the languages which is prominently used towards artificial intelligence or machine learning applications. So I would tell you no. So here Python is prominently used towards any task which you can think of, any software development, backend development of applications, and obviously towards artificial intelligence and machine learning applications. Yes, I talk about game development, I talk about web development. All of these is pretty much the place where we can use Python. So Python is kind of a multi-purpose language which finds its usage almost every single place in your technical environment, guys. So that's how strong Python is. And if we talk about the advantages, there are certain salient advantages here. First, it has practically no limit in terms of data processing. What do I mean by that? So suppose let's take any simple example, suppose Excel, right? So Excel, I know that I can only process certain number of rows and certain number of columns. It has limitations here, something around I think 10 million rows, and then I have here I think 16K columns, if I remember the numbers correctly. So this is what the limitation of Excel is. I cannot process beyond that. So Excel has a limitation. I cannot go beyond this. It will not work. But Python, on the other hand, has practically no limit. I can use Python anywhere. I can actually use Python for any different data size, whatever I have, without any issue here, without any problem. Guys, apologies. I think I got dropped off. Okay. So I think we are live again. Apologies for this. There was some network connectivity issue at my place, so I got dropped off. Okay, coming back. So what I was saying is, in terms of Excel, definitely we know that we have certain limitations of my processing capabilities. So rows and columns, I know that I can only process certain rows and certain columns. If I have to go beyond this, I cannot process it. That's a limitation I have in Excel. But the same thing if I talk about in Python, practically there is no limit in terms of data processing here. And what do I mean by this is, when I say no limit, it practically means that I can solve any amount of data, but there is a catch here, that is subjective to your infra. For example, suppose if you have a laptop of say 8 GB and you're trying to process a file of 100 GB on Python, do you think it is practically possible? No, because here Python does not have a limitation. Python can process that 100 GB of data, but do you have that resource to process that 100 GB of information? No, right? So Python practically does not have any limitation to process your data if your infra supports if you have the memory, if you have the resources to process that data, Python can practically process any data without any limit. And also at the same time, it is very much easy to use. Easy to use, as I've told you. The coding syntaxes, the language, the readability is so simple where I can practically use Python without any difficulty. And also, we know that Python is so advanced where I can carry out the complex statistical operation. What do I mean by that? So in data science, we have hypothesis testing, some statistical tests which we have to perform. So by default, Excel or any other tools definitely has certain limitations over there, where Python does provide some smart plugins, and then in fact we can carry out those smart statistical complex operations, which is slightly complicated in any other platform here. So we can carry out those complex statistical operations without any difficulty. Moreover, it is very much faster because again, the coding is so simple here. We can pretty much automate the things in a very simpler way and faster way. And moreover, it is, since open source, we are not paying any money sort of thing here to develop anything. In fact, one more very crucial advantage of Python is it is platform agnostic. But again, by that I mean it can practically connect to every single thing in your architecture. When I say, suppose I have an Oracle database and then I have a front UI on Angular and maybe a web page, for example, HTML page. So I can have Python as a middleman where I can do the scripting, and in fact I can, from the plugin, I can connect to Oracle DB, and I can even connect to my web page using some JSON files. So Python practically can get connected to any architecture you can think of without any problem. And in fact, the automation becomes so simple in Python that it is a go-to language for any developer, I can say, in that per se. So any developer would definitely like to be working on Python because it kind of eases out a lot of things. Then let's move towards the applications of Python. So as I've said, it's a multi-purpose language and it finds its usage in multiple different places. First, so definitely it has its importance in data science area. You can see this. I have written the data science applications. So when I talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning, when I talk about data analytics and even the advanced visualization, all of these things are pretty much possible very easily on Python. Yes, how it is possible? We have certain advanced high-end APIs, or we call them as libraries. So we know that packages such as pandas, NumPy, we have sklearn, we have Seaborn. So all are some advanced high-end APIs which are prominently available on top of Python, getting your data science work done with ease, right? And these are very strong packages, by the way, guys. So we will be learning them in detail later on. But yes, Python being an open source, we have these strong high-end APIs which can actually get my work done here. And obviously, since I've told you it's a multi-purpose language, it finds its usage in the programming applications as well, web development, game development, and even the finance sector. So many areas where I can think of actually Python being the backend language, it can actually be used as such. So programming applications, web development, game development, finance, all of these areas, Python finds its applications, guys. Moving further, now I'm getting a bit technical here. So now in Python, there is something called as variables. So we till now we talked about the overview of Python. Now we'll get into some technical parts. So in Python, there's something called as variables. So what are variables? Variables are nothing but certain reserved memory locations to store certain values. Suppose that I have my name Arpit Jain. I want to store it in a variable and I want to use it in different locations of my code. So I can initialize a variable which can pretty much have a value which is nothing but my name Arpit Jain. Or likewise, I can initialize another variable which can have a number 1, 2, 3, 4, or in practically anything. So variables again are one of those important things in Python where we are going to store certain values based on my initialization of them. So these are nothing but certain reserved memory locations to store the values we have. And this store values is needed for further processing in my code. So we're going to use these values in some or the other part of my code for further processing. And we're going to show you how. So, and in fact, one more thing, unlike any other programming languages, guys, variables in Python do not require initialization. Very important point. So if you would have coded in some other platforms like say Java or C or C++, if I have to use any variable, say X or Y or say var, I have to first initialize it so that this can be used at any part of my code. So before even I have to use it, I have to first initialize this. Let the code know that there is something called as this var or X or Y exists. That initialization is mandatory, but this is where variables in Python does not need any initialization. I can practically start using the codes, the variables as is the way wherever I wanted to use in my code. For example, I'll show you. Suppose, as I was talking about this, so here, as you can see, I'm initializing a variable var, which is having the name Arpit Jain, and I'm passing it under the strings. Suppose I want to print, say, my name. Okay, I'm using the print function and I'm passing my name Arpit Jain. So what it does, it will happily print my name Arpit Jain. It will do that. But what if now I have initialized this Arpit Jain and I've kept it under the variable var. Now if I do print of var, and can you see the difference here? Here I'm passing the quotes, single quote or double quote, they both are fine. In this quotes, this is meaning that this is nothing but a string or nothing but a text. So text are generally written as double quotes, but can you see in this var, I am not passing any quotes here. So the moment I do not pass any quote, this is internally getting treated as a variable. And whenever it is a variable, it is going to have something inside. So if I do print of var, it is going to refer if there is anything called as var existing in my code, which in this case, yes. So even the print of var is going to give me the same result, Arpit Jain, as my output. So that's how the variables are used. I can use this variable now at any point of code, any part of my code. Obviously, I have to make sure that I have this variable Arpit Jain stored before I'm going to use it. But likewise, I can pretty much have any single values which can be written in my variables. So that is 100% possible. But there are certain rules to initialize these variables. There are actually 5 rules for that. Number 1, it can only start with an alphabet or an underscore. So suppose I say variable var. So I can have var, but I cannot have what to say $var or %var. No. But I can have var, but I can have underscore var also. That is also possible. So it has to mandatorily start either with A to Z or capital A to capital Z. Both are fine. Or I can have underscore. So both are valid way of writing the variable. Second, it cannot take any special character apart from underscore. So I can have var underscore 1, I can have var underscore 2, I can have v underscore a underscore r underscore 1. This is all are valid, but I cannot have var hyphen 1. I cannot have var %1. No, all are invalid. So apart from underscore, I cannot have any special characters, guys. Again, this is something which is very important. Third, Variables are 100% case sensitive. So a variable called as var small or var caps, they both are different. Suppose var is having Arpit and capital VR is having 100. So these are two different variables, right? So variable names are 100% case sensitive. So I need to make sure that this is where case sensitive things has to be there, right? Fourth, numbers can be present only at end. So I cannot have numbers in the beginning. For example, 2 var or 3 var. No, I cannot have it. But numbers can be present towards the end. Var 2, var 3. This is valid. I cannot have the number in the beginning, but I can have numbers in the end. Again, it's a valid way of writing the code. Last, no keywords to be used. So yes, there are certain reserved keywords in Python. For example, we have something called as def, break, try, right? So these are certain reserved keywords which I cannot use to initialize my variable. So suppose I'm going to use, say, def is equal to 5. This will give me an error saying that I cannot use def as a reserved keyword, a syntax error, right? So again, these are the prominent 5 rules to define the variables, guys. Very important, but this is where we need to understand that how the variables are defined here. Next, Python interestingly support the strong arithmetic operations. So basics, you already know here, these 4: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Very simple. These are anyway common in every place. So for example, if I do 5 plus 2, so plus is an operator here, I'll get the answer as 7. If I do 5 minus 2, I'll get as 3. 5 multiplied by 2 with a star operator, I'll get it as 10. Or if I do 5 divide 2, I'll get 2.5. Right? So all of this is anyway common. I can perform the plus, minus, multiplication, division without any problem here. This is going to give me the prominent similar answers. But now there are 3 things which are additional in Python. First is modulus. We define this as percent. Then we have something called as exponential. We define this as double star. And then there's something called as floor division. We write double slash. So these are the 3 things which are new. So now I'm going to quickly define them. So modulus is nothing but also called as remainder when we divide 2 things. Exponential is nothing but simple exponent. Floor division is nothing but quotient. Now, for example, suppose I have say 15 divided by 8. Okay, so 15 divided by 8. I'm trying to divide 15 by 8. So 1 times 8, then I have 7 as remaining. So this is what you remember, this is what we used to do. So this part is called as quotient. This part is called as remainder. Correct? This is exactly what modulus and floor division uses. So I have a remainder of 7. So if I do 15, just removing this, so 15 modulus 8, I'll get the answer as 7. At the same time, if I do 15 floor division 8, I'll get answer as 1 because quotient is 1 here. So that's what modulus and floor division does, guys. Okay. At the same time, for the exponent, suppose I'm saying 2 double star 3. That is basically 2 to the power of 3, and it is nothing but 2 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 2, which is 8. So that's what this exponential function does. So these are the prominent 7 functions which we have in Python, so which helps you to solve the arithmetic operation with ease. Next, moving ahead, we have again certain string operations. So suppose I have a text which is, say, Arpit Jain. So I can call the lower function on top of this, and I can assume all the thing will be converted back to lowercase. So all the text will be by default converted to lowercase. Suppose I say that capital A, B, C dot lower. I'm going to remove the other ink here. So this is gone. If I do capital ABC dot lower, it is going to give me output as small abc. So all the characters will be automatically lowered here in the lowercase conversion. That's it. Next is upper function, just the opposite of it. So suppose I have small abc dot upper here. This will be nothing but capital ABC. Nothing but upper case conversion. Then we call as title. Title is nothing but camel case. So you can think about first character of everything, which is capital here. Hello Abhishek. Yes, we are here. Let me know if there is anything which I can help you. Yeah, moving back. Suppose I have, say, ABC dot title. Now what it going to give me? Only capital A, small b and c. So more like a camel case. So title function, that's what it does. So we have it here, and it's more like camel case conversion. Then we have something called a strip function. So strip function, it helps you to remove any white spaces or blank spaces. So if you have any by mistake blank space available in your text, for example, I say I have a text where I could see some blank space here, and then I have, say, A, B, C, then I have again certain blank space here, which is not visible right now, assuming that it is not visible. But I could see I have code started from here, but I could see some prominent blank space from here to here, and then blank space from here to here, which is incorrect, right? So that blank space is something which we want to remove, right? And that is where this strip function comes into our rescue. So how do we do that? I'm going to quickly show it to you. So if I do it like this, suppose my spaces dot strip, it is going to give me output as A, B, C. So all the empty spaces is gone. Okay. And then now, post this, we talk about starts with operation. So starts with is basically, it's a check where we try to find out if a particular text starts with a pattern. Suppose I say A, B, C dot starts with, and in this function I'm going to pass, say, A. So what it does, it is checking whether the text is starting with A, whether it is starting with A. I mean, it's so, even the functions are so readable, right? You can see this starts with, whether ABC is starting with A. That's how readable it is. Right? I told you it's very readable codes. So yes, ABC is starting with A, so it is true. Correct? So it's more like a question, it's more like a logical function where it is checking whether this string is starting with this pattern or not. So yes, in this case it does, so it is true. Next, ends with. Now I'm going to check the ending pattern. So ABC dot ends with A. Does this string ends with A? No. So false. This is incorrect. Right? So this is how the functions on string work. So likewise, we have few more functions, obviously practically impossible to cover every single thing, but this is how we use the functions of string on any text on any text we have. So that's pretty much what the objective of string functions are, guys. But moving ahead, now we talked about few basic ones. So in the basic data types, if you could have understood, we talked about prominently two things: numbers, and we talked about text. Text. So numbers are internally of again two types: integer and float. So integer like 1, 2, 3, minus 10, minus 20. So all are my integers. What are my float? Decimal values: 2.5, 10.6, minus 30.5. All are my float values. Pretty much simple. We have seen that. Or text, any string is pretty much what we have the text here. So these are nothing but the data type is string for them. Okay. But then comes the advanced data type, guys. So Python also has certain advanced data types. Out of them, first is lists. So list is pretty much a collection of data, a collection of objects which is heterogeneous in nature and random. So it is initialized using a square bracket, and I can pretty much add anything in this separated by commas, 1, comma 2, comma, again I can have ABC as a text, I can have 3.5 as a float also. All of this, any random value can be added in my list. There are certain properties of list. For example, first, it is random. It takes any data type. Second, it is dynamic, where I can add, I can remove, or I can even modify the values inside the list very easily. I have 4 elements right now: 1, 2, 3, 4. I can add 1 more. I can add 3 more. I can delete 2. I can modify even the existing content. I can modify this ABC to D, E, F. I can do that. So it is pretty much dynamic in nature. 3, it is nested. That means I can have even a list within a list. Suppose I am creating a list 1 L1, which is having say 1, 2, 3, and again another list here, which is 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. Then I have ABC here. So there is 100% possible. So how many elements are there? 1, 2, 3, and this entire thing is the 4th element. Then I have the 5th element. So this entire thing now will be considered as one object inside my list. So yes, we have the concept of nesting also in my list available. So 100% lists are nested. Another very important property of list is it is ordered. What do we mean by ordered? So 4th is ordered. That's what I mean. All of these objects are indexed. I can access each one of them separately. So first is given the index value of 0. In Python, indexing always starts from 0. So first one is 0, then 1, then 2, then 3. Or I can do a backward indexing as well, where the last element will be given -1 and then 1 less each, -2, -3, and -4. So if I have to access 2, I can pretty much give L1 square bracket of access index is 1. So L1 of 1, I'll get an answer as 2. Or I can give L1 of -3, even that will give me answer as 2. Hello, Oman. Thank you so much for joining us. So this is how I'm going to access the list. So these are my prominent 4 data properties of list. And the reason why we are using these advanced data types, guys, is because it is giving us the advanced mechanism to better organize my data, use it more efficiently for my own purposes, right? So list is very dynamic in nature. So always remember these are the 4 properties of list. It is random. It can have anything. Dynamic, I can add, modify, delete. It can have nesting of my list. And also it is 100% ordered. Okay. Now, if I go back to tuples, I'm just going to erase few of things here. Tuples. So tuples in fact are synonymous function to list except only one property, which is dynamic. If I remove dynamic, all of this is 100% valid for tuples as well. So tuples are also the collection object, which is random. It can have anything. It can have nesting and it is ordered, but it is non-mutable. Once created, I cannot change the tuple. Okay, what do I mean by that? And also remember, tuples are used, initialized using a parenthesis, while lists are done using square brackets. There's a difference in that. And tuples, suppose I have 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it. Once created, I cannot change it. Okay, that's pretty much what tuples are for me. Similar to list, but tuples again, the only difference is this is non-mutable. Once created, I cannot change the list tuples here for me. So that's pretty much how do we take care of tuples. So basically, they both are certain properties having certain advanced data types, which has its own individual properties used for better data management in part here. Then comes the next data type, which is dictionary, guys. So dictionary is prominently again another advanced data types, which is working in the fashion of key and the value pairs. We have something called as key and values here. So, and it is written using curly braces. So I have a key 1 and colon, I can have the value 1 for that. Then I have a comma, I can have multiple key value pairs. That's how we write the dictionaries. So for example, suppose this is my dictionary. I say name is Arpit, age is 30. So I have 2 elements in my dictionary. One key value pair is name and Arpit, and second is age and 30. So now you can see this. Very importantly, it is unordered. I do not have any index here. If I have to access Arpit, the name of the employee, then I have to give dictionary D1. In this, instead of passing the index, which might have been 0 or 1 for list and tuple, now I have to pass the key here. If I pass the key, then I'll get the value answer as Arpit. So that's the difference in dictionary. So in dictionary, what are we doing here? That is prominently where we're going to talk about the parts, which is where we are saying that now we have to pass the keys, and ultimately we will be getting the output as Arpit here. And then set on the same time is again the unique values. So all the data points is more like I'm going to talk about the unique set of values. That's what we talk about in sets. Gopal, I'm just going to introduce you today to these topics, and then in the next class we will be having the detail of each of one of them on the notebook actually. So I'm going to introduce you to notebook also, but that is not possible in day 1. So today I'm going to give you the basic introduction towards all of these, and then on the day 2 we will be having all of them covered on the notebooks as well. Okay. Okay, one last topic for today, and then I'm going to show you all of them on notebook also, so don't worry on it. Then we have something called as functions, guys. And in functions, there are 3 types of functions in Python. First is certain inbuilt functions, which are coming by default with Python. So where we say print, help, these are by default functions. The moment you install Python, it comes by default, right? It has its own purpose. And then we have something called as user defined functions. We call this as def. So we're going to create a new function with the keyword def, where we're going to find out, suppose I want to create a function which does sum of two numbers. So I can create a function with the keyword def. I can write the name like sum to number. And in this, I can write the code here, which is say number 1, number 2, and then we can write the sum operation here, which is nothing but number 1 plus number 2. So basically, what is happening is I have a function, I can create a new function sum underscore 2 underscore num with certain lines of code. So I have my code lines here. Okay. So these code lines are nothing but where now we are able to identify that this function sum to number will actually be performing these activities. So yes, I can create my own function. So user can actually create new functions here by using the UDF, user defined functions. The last is anonymous function, more like an inline function, where we say that instead of creating a function by default by using the keyword, I can create a function ad hoc as well. And that is where the concept of lambda comes. And obviously, it'll be difficult to explain lambda here in one single line on PPT. This is what we are going to cover on the notebook. So I'm going to show you how we can use lambda functions specifically, even without writing the proper function, how we can use the lambda function. That is basically, if my objective is very simple, if I can execute the code in one single line, I can simply make it even faster. Maybe I can skip to create a function and maybe use it at the same time of my execution. I can do that. So that is what and how functions are used. But again, this was just to give you an introduction towards what all different things we have in Python, and I hope that should have given you the basic idea towards how Python is used and what are the different things we have in Python. But now our intent would be to implement all of these and show you around the environment. So my recommendation here is for the next class, if you're coming for the class, so come prepared with the installation of a software called as Anaconda. Okay. So we are going to use a software called as Anaconda. So please do install this software Anaconda. And in this Anaconda, we will be using something called as Jupyter Notebook. Okay. So we will be following this pattern, and I will be showing you the workaround of Jupyter Notebook, what all different things are there on Jupyter Notebook, why Jupyter Notebook, why not anything else. So I'll be telling you all of those things. Okay, but do come prepared with the installation of Anaconda software, Jupyter Notebook, so that you can run the code side by side as well. That will make you more comfortable, right? So this was just to give you an introduction towards Python. But in the next class, do come prepared with the installation of these softwares, guys. Any questions, I'm more than happy to take. So this is what I intended to cover today. But any question, please let me know. I'm more than happy to help you.